So Byron, you've written a destruction list.
Yeah, I have. So I was laughing at a few things earlier in the recording. You saying that you didn't want to have too many units and too many attacks and stuff like that, and it's something you try and avoid. And that is very similar to the approach I've taken.
And I put 90 skeletons in my list. Yeah.
So I've taken a list I do think could compete. I don't think it is incredibly strong. It would be incredibly fun, and it would be very intimidating for people to play against. There's also a massive amount of flexibility in terms of you can change a battalion and keep the list the same. If you want a different rule, you can change a battalion and take the same unit multiple times, stuff like that. I'll go through it as I go, but from top to bottom, it is GORDRAKK, the Fist of Gork, who is still incredibly expensive, but he's also pretty hitty, and he's cool because he's on a cabbage. A Megaboss on Warcrusher, who'd be the general, and he's got the Sunblessed armor. I'm in Iron Sun, so that's non-optional, but it's a good artifact. It decreases the range of enemies by 1, which is just super useful. I allied in a Fungoid Cave Shaman because he's cheap, and he's there because of Suffocating Gravetide, which I'll explain in a little bit. I've got the Iron Fist formation, which is really, really flexible. You can take Gore Grunters, Brutes, or Ardboys, and it's 3 to 5 units. So basically this list as it stands is the 3 heroes and 1 unit for 4 drops, but you could easily drop stuff out to get it down to 3. I don't think that makes it any worse. It may indeed make it better. So it's very compact, both in terms of models, space on the table, stuff like that. But the big idea about this is it just goes mental turn 1 and then you cross your fingers for the rest of the game, essentially. That's it. So if people aren't familiar, GORDRAKK's command ability, unlike the normal Megaboss and Warcrusher, the normal cabbage, he can pick 3 destruction units. So it's not limited to Ironjaws. That doesn't particularly matter in this list, but it does have some interesting implications if you want to swap things for a rogue idol, for example, or you wanted to ally in some strange units, like you could put in some Troggers or something like that. It's any destruction, which is really cool, and it's also very unrestricted in terms of range. And the idea is, turn 1, you make 3 units plus 1 to hit, which is probably both cabbages and the unit of 6 Gore Grunters. So my battle line is 6 Gore Grunters, 10 Orruk Brutes, that's a heavy hitting unit, and then 5 Orruk Brutes. The main reason for this list including them is I have 15 painted already, actually, but I think you could swap Brutes out for Ardboys, or you could take all pigs. It really doesn't matter. They're basically, I'd be powering up 1 unit, and that needs to be pigs because it's faster, and past that point I don't particularly mind, and it's just down to personal preference, really. So you give +1 to hit to the pigs, +1 to hit to GORDRAKK, +1 to hit to the Megaboss on Warcrusher, and then you smash those across the table as fast as possible and try and hit as hard as possible turn 1. You probably Waaagh turn 1. It's basically all your eggs are in the one basket, which is you want to have less drops than your opponent, you want to go first, and you want to put them on the back foot and then do your best at that point. But I played with a few low drop monster heavy armies recently, and I just really enjoy. They make everything enjoyable. I think Ironjaws is a really good army for not having too much of anything to do in one phase, but all of your phases being important. So your magic phase, this has only got a very little one, but it's quite important. And your heroes, command abilities and stuff like that. Your target priority is really important, and it really matters where things are on the table, because you've not got many units and they're not hugely resilient, so they need to be killing the things that would kill them before you start losing the battle of attrition. It does hit like an absolute ton of bricks though. That's basically it. It's quite a compact list. Very few models. What you've got 15, 21, it's 24 models, and still a normal amount of wounds though. It's got a lot going for it. It's 90 wounds, and quite a lot of them are heavily armored. You also get
just for my benefit, because obviously the points I've got on here are the unupdated points, so it looks like it's over pointed. How much does it actually come in at?
Okay, so your brutes go down by 10 points each.
Oh, okay, so you've lost. There's 30 points off, so it's 1990 basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, they've gone down a little. What's happened in the book is loads of things gone up by 10 points, loads of things have gone down, and you'll find that maybe slightly annoyingly, if you were taking a lot of hard boys or something like that, you'll end up 10 points over, but there's normally a way to kind of jiggle stuff around until you're happy with it. That's the list. Anything that can't put up a screen is really going to suffer against it. Anything that does put up a screen or deploys off table, I think that's where you're going to have difficulties, because it doesn't. You've got fly, but it's on something with an absolutely huge base, and the more crushers, you can use your destruction command ability to let them move, and also I'll explain how the idea of suffocating Gravetide works. In the Ironjaws core rules, if any unit takes damage in a phase and they are more than 9 inches away from your opponent, you can make a d6 move with it. So that includes your own magic phase. So the idea is, if you really, really want to get not only in someone's face, but around their flanks or something like that, start the game, you can put a cabbage in the pigs, just tap them with Suffocating Gravetide. Obviously you have to get the spell off, but I mean, that's a risk you're running to take, and it's only a 20-point spell. Tap them with Suffocating Gravetide, they all get a d6 move, and then your formation, someone gets to make a normal move. Your command ability, someone gets to make a normal move. And just the vanilla move on those models, they're moving 9, 10, 12 inches anyway. So you can very easily be, the pigs just get to be 18 inches up the table anyway, because the formation, and your cabbages can be 20 inches up the table. And all of those adding a d6 to them makes them pretty effective.
Yes, I played against a guy who used the teleport spell that they've got, and he would damage them with an endless spell and then teleport them 9 inches away, and then they get their d6 move.
Oh, so, you can choose to do it in that order?
Yeah.
Okay, that just got better. I think
you need to take a weird knob for that, and then
weird knob shaming for it.
So the Ironjaws list I was writing was Iron Suns, and it was revolving around that trick with Ard Boys, because they get +2 to charge as well. So
auto in, essentially.
But you can also teleport the Maw Crusher outside of 12, and then you can use the command ability to move. So then you can move within 3 and then charge. So there's loads of shenanigans you can do, and Iron Suns have a ability where if they can counter charge with a command point, I believe, the command ability, so you can basically spend a point to charge.
Yeah, at the end of your opponent's charge phase, if something is out of charge, you can make a charge. That's super flexible though, so I mean, straight up at that point, you would probably change to a weird knob shaman, which rather than you'd have to do some jiggling with points. But you could squeeze him in there, you'd be 10 points over. So just some changing around of your core could change that.
Fungoid's good because he gives you a command point on a 4.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, the list I had in, I think it had it didn't have GORDRAKK, it had a idol in it, and it had a Wardock and a weird knob, but it's essentially very similar. So
yeah, it's a really difficult decision where to go with your drops for this list. I don't know what you guys think, but like, there's a 3 or less I feel far safer than 4 or less. Which is, it's just kind of a toss-up at that point what you want to do. You can have bigger core units, but I wanted to have a monster heavy list. You can quite easily, so I took it with the Iron Fist formation. The other one is called
Gorefist.
Gorefist, and you go pig heavy, which is quite fun anyway. You save 30 points, so that opens up quite a lot.
Are there other ways to pre-game move, don't they? So
they all get a pre-game move. So the formation I've gone with, you pick one of the heroes of the 3 to 5 units. He gets 2 more wounds, and then from him, in your hero phase for free, you don't spend a point or anything. You can make a normal move with any of the 3 units. The Gorefist, at the start of the game, all 3 to 5 units of pigs get to make a normal move. So that one's kind of everything goes up, and then the other one is a bit more flexible and you can use throughout the game, which I think my list doesn't make the most of, because let's say I choose the champion of the pigs. I mean, I could choose the champion of the brutes, it might be useful, but you might end up separating yourself from the units you want to move anyway, just by definition, because you're going to send one unit off twice the speed of the others, particularly if it's a mounted unit.
And with the mount traits, you get one for formation and one for just having an army, don't you?
Yeah. So they've both got mount traits. Is it correct that your special character can have a mount trait because Scroll Builder allowed me to?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
It's not an
Okay,
artifact
then.
or a command trait, so...
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I really like that. I was excited when I saw it. So the ones I've gone for are Heavian, which is you add 1 to your destructive bulk rolls. So when you roll those dice, you're not rolling 1 more dice. You are 1/6 more likely to get a more wound through when you charge into something, which is just cool. And then the Loudon, I think that's once per game. For 1 combat phase, you kind of pop this ability, and any models within 3 inches of this model are -1 to hit. And the idea is on that first turn, when you do get in, and you're at +1 to your armor save, you're also kind of being debuffed. So your eggs are in the first turn basket, but it's kind of got legs for the rest of the game. But you're going to be at your opponent's mercy if they are very flexible. So screens are probably the biggest issue that I think it would face.
I mean, it is unusual. I think Meanan's quite a good mount trait as well, if I remember correctly, but I can't remember what it does. But it's an unusual list because obviously you've got double cabbage and one of them is GORDRAKK, so it's kind of... I think it'd look really cool.
Yeah.
It's one of those
GORDRAKK
armies.
hits like a ton of bricks, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Meanan is add 1 to the damage characteristics of this model's mighty fists and tail. Heavy is 1 to destructive bulk rolls. They're all really good, actually. Loudon is the subtract hit rolls, and there's 1 for a 4-up bouncing of spells. And then there's, I didn't take Fasten because I just always take things that are to do with movement, and I tried to be slightly different, even though I've written a first term RAL list, which is not anything I ever do.
Exactly.
2 inches extra move on a Maw Crusher is... They're not the fastest of dragons, so that's really, really good too. And the entire idea of the list is you turn 1, you pop GORDRAKK's ability, you buff 3 units of +1 to hit, they get into combat, and then once you're there, you've done enough damage that you don't need that anyway. To completely flip the list on its head, rather than going with Ironjaws, you can make it Big Waaagh. And what that adds is Big Waaagh gets better and better as the turn goes on. You get points for having units in combat, you get 6 points flat for having GORDRAKK as your general anyway, and you build up a tally table, and at each point you get at 12 points you get +1 to hit, you get a 6-up ward, which is not unuseful at all, you get +1 to wound. So as the game goes on and your units get smaller, they should remain more effective, and rather than spending GORDRAKK's command points to buff these 3 units, everyone in your army is going to have it for free anyway, so you can spend your command points at that point on stuff like reroll 1s to hit or to wound and make things really, really, really reliable.
Because if you swap GORDRAKK down to a normal Maw Crusher, you could then put in a War Chanter, and if you went Big Waaagh, it's probably better. Like if you go Big Waaagh to put the War Chanter in, because he gives you it's just such a good ability. It's like for 80 points, they're just nuts. I think you give you +1 damage, don't you, on all the attacks?
Oh, it's crazy. So the biggest reason to take him, if I did take him, I would go Gore Fist, and I'd have 1 unit of 9 pigs, and they would be dialed up to 11 to a million in terms of damage potential.
Be the Spinal Tap Ironjaw arm.
Yeah.
Everything's turned up to 11.
Yeah.
Oh god. Well, it's just that 1 unit. 9 pigs is a mass amount of attacks. They'd be hitting on 2s and 3s. There's actually a +1 to wound spell. If you did take a Big Waaagh wizard as well. Sorry, Big Waaagh, a Ironjaws wizard. So you could be sending guys in there that are 2s to hit, 2s to wound. You have command points coming out your arse with this list as well. The command trait you have to take in Iron Suns is +1 command point. If you had a Fungoid Shaveman, he gets 1 on a 4+ anyway. You've got 1 for battalion and you start with 1.
And there's an artifact as well that you can take, which is a staff, which gives you it gives you a command point on a 4-up. You can put on a weird knob, because although you've got a formation, you've only got 1 artifact in your list, haven't you? Because you can't give 1 to the Fungoid Shaman, and you can't put 1 on GORDRAKK. So if you had a normal Maw Crusher, you could artifact that, or you could, with the points you've dropped, put in with some jiggling around, maybe you could put in a weird knob and then give him the staff, so you get 2 chances on a 4-up to get a command point, 1 from the Fungoid, 1 from the weird knob, and then the weird knob could take the teleport spell that gives you a chance on turn 1 to drop the Maw Crusher outside of 9 inches outside of 12, and then you could spend their command point to move, get within 3, and get like a cheeky charge. So there's loads of options. That's why I really like the Ironjaws now. There's all these little tiny tweaks.
Yeah. The real difficulty for me with it is you counter the weaknesses that this army inherently has by, you can either take a very large unit of our boys and then you've got to screen yourself, but it really changes the dynamic of how you would be in the early terms. But if you have the really cool things to add that make you more damaging, more reliable, get more command points, whatever it is, they raise your drops. And I think this list is far more effective at doing what it does at 3 or less, but it's far more well-rounded at 4 or less. But there is a huge difference between either of those. I don't know which direction you'd go in. The piggy formation and the points it saves you also is I think it's a really strong consideration because they all get a move. I'd probably go for like a 9 and a 3 and a 3. Piggy formation plus War Chanter is a very, very scary prospect.
It's a bit like the agony of the choice of, do you go for a big unit that's easier to buff but then has battle shock issues, or do you go MSU and just run them in minimal size units because the formation's flexible enough to have up to 5 units anyway, and then you don't lose any drops. So it's like there's loads of things like do you take 10 brutes or do you take 2 5s? If you take 10, then it's 1 buff, but then if you take 2 5s, you can be in 2 places at once. So I think there's a lot of these nuanced little choices, but I think for me, I would just go more drops, more flexibility, and more options than less drops.
Like 5 drops with a Shaman and a War Chanter, for example.
Yeah, because I just think that you can, unless you're in a 1 drop, you cannot guarantee that you're not playing someone who's also got a low drop army. And I think that the amount of times that will matter is a lot less than the benefit you get over a tournament, but it's only my preference. I mean, I don't tend to play low drop armies anyway, but I think I think it's just down to the player, isn't it? And I think sometimes the drop is really important because it's the scenario dictates it, but because the army's not particularly survivable, it's a bit of a glass cannon, you kind of have to have that choice, but then I think inherently comes a little bit weaker by having the choice.
It's not anything available in the book to delete screens, really, is there, apart from impact hits, basically
destructive bulking them and getting lucky.
That's another reason to go for the 9 pigs. So pigs get a 4+ mortal wound on the charge, and then you've got your 2 destructive bolts as well, so you do have a chance to wipe stuff out. And obviously if you can start that cascade in Ironjaws, there's definitely a benefit to wiping stuff out, whether it's with your charges or in the combat phase for their special ability. You get to immediately go, if you wipe out a unit in the combat phase with 1 unit, you get to immediately go with a unit, another unit, not the same one, you can't go twice for free, that would be ridiculous, but you can go with another unit, and it's unrestricted. It's just, if you did this, you can do that. And it's not like another unit within 3 or another unit fighting the same unit you are.
Again, that's encourage you to take bigger units because then you're more likely to wipe things out, but then your battle shock becomes, it's all about the battle shock. Becomes scary.
When that cascade goes though, it's like when that works, it's a bit sort of like dramatic to be on the receiving end of. You're like, oh wow, like it's just like dead, and then next thing you know, there's nothing left in your army.
You do have the breath weapon from the dragons, which isn't actually too bad. So between
I've never seen it hit in a game.
Really?
Every game I've played against one, it's never hit. I'm just like,
you got 2 chances in this one. I think GORDRAKK's is slightly better, but between breath weapon, and then 3 sources of impact hits, you're basically fairly heavily reliant on that. But if someone's screening with something that isn't 20 plague bearers or something resilient, if they just put 10 dudes in the way, you're basically getting those for free. And then you just have to pick to do things in the right order to allow you to charge again if you do wipe out something with destructive bulk. So you could do Piggies and then Cabbage to take the last wound off. He gets to charge again, he gets destructive bolt again, and your Piggies can pile in. And then I'd give them the 2-inch reach option for that reason. So once you piled in, effectively, if someone was 4 inches behind their screen, you still get to touch them with your pile in plus 2 inch reach.
the War Clan book really appeals for me for all the movement shenanigans and things you can do with it, and it's a combat army, and it's an army that has those nuances, and it reminds me when you used to play in like 7th edition, you used to set up the overruns into units to fight with the other unit with the chariots that just do that thing of now overran into the side, then you fight that one, you double up on the impact hits. It's got that kind of feel to it that if like the Matrix aligned and you set it up and you got a bit lucky, you could literally just cascade through half their army without them even getting to roll a dice, which a sick part of me would love to set that up. You know, there's going to be that perfect storm.
At one time in 20 games.
And you just, then that'll be have such a good sense of achievement that you've set that up and played for it. So it's definitely an army I want to have on the table as soon as gaming gets back. So I think I need, now that the changes and everything's in, I'm gonna go back to the drawing board, because I have to rewrite my list anyway, and then come up with my my quintessential Ironjaw army that I'll probably take out at some point to see how it plays.
Do you think Suffocating Gravetide is the best way to trigger that move?
Maybe, I don't know. I think there's better choices. I mean, like Damn Terrain is obviously the best choice because you get a benefit as well. But you know, it's I think Burning Head gives you something as well. You can do it with that, but I think it gives you reroll ones to wound as well. So but I think you have to be near it when you fight. I can't remember, but
anyway, would go rather than Big Waaagh as a final question.
I like Ironjaws and Iron Sun, so that's where I ended up for the starters. So, but Big Waaagh did have its appeal as well. But I think for me it was I just like the Iron Suns. That was what I ended up with for my first draft. So I mean, it will change as it hits the wild and you play with it and you realise that it's better to do this and tweaking that. But what I like about that book is that you can endlessly tweak that list with different formation, different core setups, different character setups, Big Waaagh or Ironjaws, or you know, endless spell choice, and you're never really going to run out of options. And there are nuances to a list that does the same thing, but that gives you enough choice to mix things up a bit, I think so.